Okay, everyone, welcome to the Comic Book Report. I'm happy to say I'm here today with Mr. Declan Shalvey. Thank you so much for coming on the channel today, Declan.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
Okay, so I have a couple questions for you. Before we jump in, though, I do want to say a special thank you to Dynamite Entertainment for helping to coordinate this interview. I know we're going to be talking a lot about or not a lot, at least a little bit about your upcoming Terminator series for them. And I thought, why bury the lead? Maybe we can just jump right in with that a little bit, if that's okay.
Sure.
So for this series, did you get approached for it? Did you pitch it? How did this come about?
Yeah, in all the best stories, somebody asked rather than me having to come beg,
Wonderful.
which is always a nice. I think I'm in a different place in my career right now where I'm used to begging, and now I don't have to. But yeah, no. I was going to America to do a convention and to do a little bit of a tour, and Nate Cosby told me that he was my editor on Thundercats, that Nick Barucci, the publisher of Dynamite, might want to talk to me about something. I was like, okay, it's cryptic, but
yeah,
see what it is. So yeah, so I was at the Dynamite offices in New Jersey, and Nick asked about Terminator, and first I was like, Terminator? Surely there's a comic. When's the last? My brain is trying to process, when was the last time they did a comic of that? And after standing there for 5 minutes in silence, Nick eventually said hello, and I was like, "Oh right." I was, I got my brain together, and it was as simple as that, really. I think my only concern really was my schedule, just because I'm busy with a lot of stuff, and Thundercats is kind of pretty. It's not just a book I'm writing; it's kind of sprawling in nature. So I was I kind of had a talk with the editor about what the book would and could be, and I realized, no, this is something I really want to do. So jumped right in. It's such a cool concept. It's such a cool visual element to it. I love the franchise. So yeah, it wasn't a case of do I want to do it? It's like, can I physically do it? And I'm in the middle of figuring that out.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I look forward to checking it out. I've been a fan of that film franchise for quite a while myself, and I'm interested to see a kind of new take on that world and that, what it has to offer. So, very cool. One more thing about this Terminator series, if you're able to talk about it or want to talk about it with this, I guess my question for you is, what are you hoping to bring to this series, if that makes sense? Is there a Declan Shalvey stamp you want to put on it?
No, it's a good question. I'm looking to bring it back to its pulpy roots.
Ooh.
In that, I love all the sci-fi stuff. I love all, as a fan of the franchise, I love all that stuff. But when I went back to look at the original film, it's really a B movie. It's a schlocky kind of a horror film with sci-fi elements. And not that I'm necessarily looking to do a horror film, but I'm looking to do a pulpy kind of, terror-filled kind of book that has that monster basically in it, that kind of chilling metal monster, rather than it all being about time travels and paradoxes and stuff like that, which I love all that stuff, but it's been done. I've done it. So I'm just trying to take the original. It's weird when you're used to all the following films and following a franchise, when you go back to the original and realize this could have gone total other places. So I'm really trying to bring it back to its original kind of noirish, pulpy roots.
Awesome. Well, that's really exciting to hear. That's not what I expected, and honestly, I am delighted to hear that. I'm all about that. And what's interesting is that first film has such a specific kind of moodiness to it, and I think that, when I'm hearing things like pulp and noir, I love it. I think that's going to fit so good. Wow, I'm very excited for that.
Because I think I think Terminator 2 is a masterpiece. I love that film, but it definitely changed the direction of the franchise to be, leaning on the post-apocalyptic, kind of time travel stuff, which which I love. I've no complaints about that, but there was some limitations as regards, we can only really work within the continuity of the first film, which originally I was thinking that really kind of stops us from going X, Y, and Z, and then I kind of realized, actually, good, going that direction is where everything is already gone. It's been done. So like, if I could just kind of keep this a kind of a more, I don't want to say like 2000 AD mood to it, but like more of a.
You can, as far as I'm concerned. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. Like have it slightly more of an anthology feel, whereas every issue is going to be pretty much a different place, a different time.
Yeah.
And the Terminator has a mission. Like the mission that we know that's to stop John Connor. Yada yada yada. That's been again cool, brilliant, love it. But like it's not a new story. So if the computer can't, if that mission fails, then what's the next logical step? So that's kind of what the overall approach of the book is. So it'll be multiple different attempts to try and like stop something from happening. But it's really more it is more about the Terminator trying to stop something rather than the humans, because I think we don't need to explain what a Terminator is every issue. We don't need to explain what Judgment Day is every issue. Every reader knows what it is. Yeah. So with that kind of in mind, we can just kind of hop in and just tell fun, I say fun, but like chilling, terrifying, scary thriller type of stories,
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I can't wait. And if I looked it up, is that releasing in October, your first issue? When is the first?
It is. I think it's October 8th, I think. Awesome. I have a calendar right here in front of me. No, it will be a 9th then. Yeah, that's the Wednesday. That's issue 1. Issue 2 has just been solicited, where we see the Terminator in Vietnam, which is kind of one of my first ideas. I'm like, that would be cool. That's a cool image. And of course, I draw the covers too, so I naturally just drew them in front of a massive napalm explosion. So I'm basically kind of giving myself excuses to draw cool stuff, and then have the artist Luke Sparrow draw all the really, really hard stuff, which he is doing an amazing job at, I have to say. Pages are rolling in, and I'm just blown over. He's so good. For somebody who doesn't like have many books under his belt, he is phenomenal.
Awesome. Well, I personally can't wait to check that out. And October's right around the corner. So awesome. Well, very, very cool. It's going to be awesome to see that kind of take flight and see what happens with that. And I wish you the best of luck with that. I know I definitely want to check it out. Great. Well, thank you so much for touching on that. And again, if you're interested, pick that up by way of Dynamite Entertainment. A couple questions for you, if you don't mind as well. I was really eager to have the opportunity to speak to you today. I think one of the things I'm looking forward to talking about a little bit is that you're my first comic creator I've interviewed who has done double duty, or sometimes more than double duty, as both the writer and artist at different points, sometimes all together. And so I'm hoping to get a little bit of your thoughts on how that process has been. And I guess for me, one of the questions I go to first is, so far, or at least not so far, at this point in your career, do you find that you enjoy the writing only, art only, or kind of having the hands-on on everything, as far as when you approach a new project these days?
Well, I'm in the very nice position where I'm pretty much doing all of that. I mean, I'm not just drawing something. Well, I guess in some cases covers. So I'm drawing covers, I'm writing scripts, I'm drawing some of those scripts, and I'm doing the covers to all of those scripts. Which isn't really where I thought I'd end up. I grew up just wanting to draw X-Men and Spider-Man, and that was it. If I got to draw for Marvel, that would be dream unlocked. But then I got to do that in my late 20s, and all of a sudden, then the dream, you reach the top of the mountain that you were looking for, and then I think the analogy I've been making is, and all of a sudden another mountain is visible to you. I primarily was an artist for a good few years, drawing various books at Marvel, like Deadpool and Thunderbolts and Venom, Moon Knight. And then after I started doing creator-owned work, I kind of got the bug to write a project. And then that started, then it kind of developed into, and I wasn't drawing that. I didn't really have aspirations to write and draw because I had no confidence in writing necessarily. I had confidence in drawing because I've been doing it for 10 years at that stage.
Right.
But, I was working on Injection with Warren Ellis and Jordi Belair, and Warren was doing all these amazing projects on the side of our book. And so was Jordi. She was coloring like Batman and Spider-Man and like all all these other amazing creator books. And I realized I was the only one who had one job. Which when you're drawing a book, you need to have one job because it just takes so much work. But I did, there was other things I wanted to do, and writing offered those opportunities. Like I wrote and drew an Irish crime book. That was my first thing. And then other things started popping up. And, I like, trying to think, like there's books I'd love to write, but I don't necessarily want to draw them,
Oh, wow.
Cover,
okay.
Great, it's not a slight or anything. It's so much work to draw a comic. You're basically dedicating a year of your life,
right,
roughly, if not more, to one project. So writing offered me a way to be able to kind of work on multiple things, stuff that I was invested in, but just couldn't afford to like take a year of my life off. So now in a place where I do my own book called Old Dog for the last year or so, that I was writing and drawing and coloring. So that was my book that I got to do everything on.
Yeah, the triple threat.
Which is great to be able to do. I hadn't yet really done that. I think I wrote and drew and colored a Immortal Hulk one shot for Marvel a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed that. I'm like, I want to do more of this. So that's why I developed Old Dog, so I'd have a project where I could do that. But I was also co-writing a book called Time Before Time with Image, and then I was writing Alien at Marvel, and now at the moment I'm writing Thundercats, I'm writing Terminator, I'm writing and drawing Mystique, and there's a couple of other small things here and there that I'm writing. So it's offered me like so much more fun stuff. Like if I could only do Terminator, that would be cool. If I could only do Thundercats, that would be cool. If I could only do Mystique, that would be cool. But I'm in a place where I get to do all of them. I just can't draw all of them. And Marvel pay me a very nice page rate, so I'm happy to draw that one. Also, it's a fun one. It's a fun one to draw anyway because she's a shapeshifter, so I can just draw whatever I like. But so that's where I'm at. I kind of like have 3 projects I can balance, and one of them I'll draw. And that's great because it means I'm getting to stretch other muscles. Like Thundercats is very different to Mystique, which is very different to Terminator. And so I'm not limited by one type of story. I mean, I am limited to some degree because they still do take time, and I can't really do any more than I'm currently doing. But writing has given me the power to diversify my portfolio, as it were. And also, I love working with other people. Like, so what I love doing my solo project, which was Old Dog and is now Mystique. I also like working with other people, hence why I knew I was going to be doing Mystique this year, but that's why I put together the Old Dog anthology, because I like anthologies and I like to work with other people. I didn't know Thundercats was going to come along, which, changed everything. And now Terminator. So the anthology was a way for me to work with other people when I knew I'd only be doing another project. But then everything changed, plans, make plans and God laughs. So now I get to have the best of all worlds. Sorry, it's a very long, drawn-out answer to your question.
No, I love it. I just appreciate your time. And you actually stumbled upon something I was hoping to bring up next, which was this idea of collaboration. And I love to hear that you're a big collaborator. Obviously, I feel like comic books is a huge collaborative medium in mostly, not always. Like I said, there's things like what you do with Old Dog, where for the most part, you're doing so much of it. I guess my question is, as someone, because I was first familiar with you as an artist, things like Moon Knight, but now that you've not transitioned, because you're obviously still doing a lot of art, but you're also segueing into more writing projects and kind of both simultaneously. Did you find, like, because one of the questions I was hoping to ask you today is, like, what are some of your dream collaborators that you hope to work with sometime that you haven't yet? But I think a more interesting question to me right now, hearing you speak a minute ago, was, as someone who came in as more of an illustrator with, like, writing aspirations sound like they grew kind of organically while you were in the industry, if I heard that right. So I guess my question is, when I think about collaboration, did you initially think along the lines of, hey, who are writers I want to be paired with? But now you're in kind of a unique position as someone who started in the art side of it to be, hey, who are some other artists I want to actually kind of depict what I'm doing with the writing here? Like, is that a strange is that a strange transition? Like, do you find yourself having now dream like pencilers and like that kind of artistry people that you want to collaborate with rather than even just writers now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's changed because I mean, like there's very few writers I want to work with, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way. Like there's people who've come up, you know, alongside me or after me, who are great, but like it's really the ones I grew up with that I would want to work with. So it's like you know, Brubaker, Garth Dennis, Jason Aaron, and Warren. It's like Warren is not short of brilliant ideas. Like so, it's like I'd like to do something else with Warren. I like, but those are you know, that's probably it. You know, but they're all people who did seminal work when I was a kid. So that's just imprinted on me. You know, absolutely. And when it comes to like newer people, I'm more. Like if I'm a slightly cynical answer to your question about like writing is that it gave me more control over my drawing career. You know, which I'm not gonna lie and say that it wasn't a factor in doing it. Part of it was, but if I can write, then I don't need anybody else. You know, and not that I was looking to just, you know, be off on my own. It's just that I think there's something to be said for like being self-reliant.
Creative control, not having your own direction,
and not having your career like tied to another person necessarily, you know, because I think the way to build your name up as an artist is to work with bigger writers, and I definitely did that. So like to your question, yes, it was writers. Who can you work with who'll bring you up? So, you know, I was looking to work with like Jeff Parker initially, and then like Jerry Duggan or Brian Wood, or people who are known to bring you up, and then Warren was the biggest. And that definitely, then Moon Knight, the biggest effect of my career for sure. But now, you know, now that I generally like, not that I'd never ever work with a writer again, it would just probably be just one of those four, you know. So it has shifted to, if I'm going to draw something, you know, I want it to mean the most to me. So it's probably going to be something I want to write. So, you know, if somebody offered me Batman to draw, I probably only want to do it if I'm writing it. You know, because I don't want to be the guy who drew an arc. I want to be a guy who did their own take. Does that make sense? And I'm weirdly kind of getting to do that with these kind of, I don't say smaller properties, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, who was talking about Thundercats a year ago? A Terminator 2. I'm getting to kind of do my own spin on these things. And the same with Mystique. So it's an amazing place to be. And I'd like to keep doing that for the most part. I think if I get really, really tired, I mean, because it is like I was you know, I was trying to get script to Drew for the latest Thundercats, and I know I need to get more script to Luke for Terminator. And then a few days ago, I was thinking, there's another script. Who else do I need to get pages to? Oh yeah, me, because I have to draw the next issue of Mystique. You know, so there's a little bit of that in where I'm working to make sure other people are have their work. But like I'm also responsible for myself, which is kind of a downside. I'm used to not having to worry about that. So I think there might come a time where I just want to take a break and draw something else with somebody for somebody else, which would be cool. But in general, I'm enjoying this position where I'm in control of what I'm working on, and also I'm, you know, invested visually and as a kind of a project manager. That's one thing you know they don't say about writers is you kind of end up being a project manager for the book.
Interesting.
Which is fine. I mean, I like that. I like the project manager side of it, you know, having ideas and thinking of creators and stuff like that. That's why I kind of did the anthology as well. Is, you know, as a creator, you end up fan casting books a lot, and then you kind of end up in a position where you can do that type of stuff. So I like that. So yeah, I find there's actually Luke Sparrow, who's drawing Terminator. He was one of those for me. I felt like he was a guy who people weren't really noticing, and I saw his stuff. I'm like, this guy's brilliant. Why is nobody hiring him? And then when Terminator came along, I was working on the Old Dog anthology, and I thought he could do a really good job on this script, and I checked with him because you never know, he could be really, really busy, but he didn't have anything on at the time, so he did that story. I'm like, this is great. He'd be perfect for Terminator. So I asked if he had anything coming up. He didn't. I got onto the editor. I'm like, this is the guy. This is the guy. I want this guy. So, you know, even though Luke wasn't a name or anything like that, he was just one of those. it's like they're like diamonds in the rough, incredibly talented people who, for some reason, nobody's quite caught on. And I think it's a lesson for anybody who wants to create their own books. Like that's what you need to find. The biggest artists in the world are locked in doing big projects with publishers with known writers. What you want to do is find somebody who nobody's quite caught yet and grab them, and then give them a project that they can like soar on. And I feel like I was lucky I got to do like that. I got to do stuff like that. So that Luke is an example of what you're talking about. Now there's definitely like artists who I'd love to work with, but I'm also kind of like, why the hell would they want to work with me? Like they're, I got Chris Sprouse to do a story for the anthology. Now I didn't write that story, but I did want to because it's Chris Sprouse. But I asked Matthias Bergara and I wrote that story. So Matthias Bergara is probably one of the most amazing artists in our industry right now. I wrote a story for him. That's fucking cool. So there's definitely stuff like that. I tend to look for up and comers to get them opportunities because I think it is tough for people coming up. I think there's like a lot of A-list talent that are way up here you can't get, and I think there's like B-list or C-list like me in the scheme of things the publishers know and will go to, but like people who are like coming up at the bottom don't get a lot. So I do try and do that if I can, but by all means, like if like a huge, amazing, incredible artist came to me and said, like, do you want to do something? I'd absolutely hop on it. I would just find it a little bit more intimidating, is all, because I'm like, you're a better artist than I am. Why would you want me to write something for you?
Yeah, sure. Very cool. Well, I appreciate that. And honestly, I think it's really cool to see, like you said, like writers are sometimes these kind of de facto project managers. I never really knew that about the industry. That's really
in good ways and bad ways. Like I like that, but it also means that artists aren't. So I spent a lot of my career being an artist, and you don't know what's being said about you. You don't know what editors. You're not part of the conversation of where your career is going. By the time they ask you what do you want to do, you've already put in all the like hours in the mines. So like from writing point, like say I'm talking to the editor of Thundercats and another writer about what we're doing next. And Drew isn't part of those conversations, not because Drew's not a collaborator on Thundercats, but like also, he doesn't need to know what's happening X, Y, and Z. But the stuff that will affect him, I'll talk to him about. And I mean, Drew have a good dynamic together, but a lot of it is for practical reasons where the writers end up and to get work with the editors to kind of develop things. And it's one thing I do miss about just drawing is like not having to deal with all the bloody administration and all of the back and forth and all of the messages. And like, I remember the time where I just got up and I drew and that's all I did. And it was now looking back, it was pretty sweet. But what it's meant, the way my career has gone means I'm I'm drawing a little less because I'm writing, but it's just, there is more of that kind of administrative stuff, which I hate, but it's the downside that comes with having a lot more career autonomy, which ultimately is the best place to be.
Yeah, the greater good, I guess. Very cool. Well, not to pivot a little bit, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that I want to rewind a little bit now. I think I got super into some of the projects you're working on now, but kind of rewinding it a little bit, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Where did you start? I'm assuming you maybe read some comics first, or were you just into art, or how did this all begin? How did you eventually get into the comic book industry? Like, where did that start for you?
I'll try to be as concise as I can. I mean, I always drew. I was always the guy in my class who drew. There wasn't a lot of art. I'm from the west of Ireland. There's a big kind of focus on, I guess, in arts, it's more literature in Ireland. That's kind of we're more known for. But comics weren't a thing. I did read a lot of comics. I read like new stuff on the newsstands and stuff in libraries. But it was the cartoons of the 90s, the Batman, Spider-Man, X-Men cartoons that blew my mind. And I just had to find out more, So I managed to track down American comics, which of course seems so exotic and, amazing. And I just like fell in. I was basically already drawing comics. I was drawing Star Trek comics. I just didn't know that these things existed. I was just trying to, like, not proper stories, just like designs and like people walk into a room and then, you're a kid, so you get distracted and you go do something else. But I was basically kind of on that road. I just didn't know that it was really a thing and that it was a career. And I remember reading an interview with Adam Kubert one time where he said he signed some kind of contract for a certain amount of money. And I went into my mum and I went, "Is that a lot of money?" And she was like, "Fuck yeah." So I was like, "Oh, okay. So you can make a living on this." I was going to do it anyway, but stuff like that definitely helped. So I basically just drew comics all through school, did whatever exams I needed to do to get into art college.
Wow.
Went to a fine art college, which had no interest in comics at all, but which sucked. But it also gave me kind of a wider art education. So when I finished college, I didn't know this is the early days of the internet, so it wasn't all around. There was no social media, but I found there was a comic book artist for 2000 AD who was in a small convention up in the north of Ireland, which to me was a terrifying prospect because all I ever grew up hearing about the north was bombs and whatnot. But it was all calmed down, so it was fine. So I went up and met him, and he gave me a portfolio review, and he gave me some harsh criticisms, but some compliments too, and he kind of encouraged me to go to shows in the UK, which again was a big deal to travel from Ireland to the UK. For me it was, and then once I kind of did that a few times, then go to America and show my portfolio there. So it was a lot of like, scraping by, doing portfolios, saving up to go to conventions, getting shot down, coming back. So over the process of like 3 or 4 years, I eventually got a job, and that job leads to your next job and to your next job. And then ultimately I got a job at a 28 Days Later comic for Boom Studios. And that was my first American work because everything I'd done previous was kind of UK centric.
Sure.
And I met Jeff Parker, who was the writer of Thunderbolts at the time. Yeah. And he asked if he wanted me to send his stuff to Marvel. And I got very Irish about it and basically tried to like apologize and tell him he didn't have to do it. Which you Americans don't get our kind of self-depreciating humor, or just nature. I shouldn't say humor, because we just do it. But yeah, so I got to do a 2-issue fill-in on Thunderbolts because Kev Walker had just done like a giant-sized anniversary issue, I think. So naturally, we needed a fill-in. So I came in to do the fill-in, and Marvel has started doing double shipping a lot, or that was one of the first titles they started doing double shipping. So they needed a backup artist to basically draw 6 or 7 issues a year, and it had gone well on the backup, so they just kind of kept me on. So that's how I broke in mainstream.
That is awesome. I love that.
Yeah, that was 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a ride.
Yeah, it's been crazy since. So I started at Marvel just trying to be good boy, to hit your deadlines, be good to work with, and went on from Thunderbolts to Venom, and like did a little bit of DC stuff like Northlanders, and then Conan at Dark Horse, and then Deadpool was probably the biggest thing for a good while, and then Moon Knight with Warren changed everything.
Yeah, I'm still making my way through that Moon Knight run, but I've loved all of it. I've been a fan of Warren Ellis's stuff for a while now, and that's like I said, I think that's where I first saw some of your stuff.
But we only did we did 6 issues, and then it moved on. It was Mr. Knight and everything, but it moved on to Brian Wood, and then Colin Bunn, and then Greg Smallwood and Jeff Lemire did like a good solid run on that after.
Yeah, I read the Lemire stuff. Gosh, if you only did 6 issues, I'm actually almost close to being done with your run. That's exciting. Well, I know I'm going to finish reading later.
Yeah, good. Thank God that'll be over.
yeah. No, I loved it. Honestly, so far it's fantastic. I know this is kind of. I think I'm just going to jump right into this. So when I first got in contact with you from our contact at Dynamite, I was really eager, to talk to you. But I was like, it's probably time I read like another thing from Declan Shalvey before I talk to him, have something more fresh to talk about. So I did some like digging on Google, and I picked up your first paperback of Old Dog.
Thanks, man.
And I kind of fell head over heels with this thing. I have not read something like this in a minute. I just think it's fantastic. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about. What's up?
Yeah, please. What do you mean something like this? What did it remind you of?
Yeah, so for me, I love a good kind of espionage spy thriller kind of work, you know, like I think for me like and also some like geopolitical stuff going on. Like to me it kind of reminded me of like some of the earlier stuff I read with like Captain America by Brubaker was another thing that it struck a similar chord for me initially with that kind of like again that kind of espionage feel where we're kind of globetrotting, we're going to all these different areas, there's kind of these missions and stuff. But what really struck me was just how much you played with kind of like genre bending or kind of melding of so many different genres together. And I don't want to go into spoilers because I really want so many people to read Old Dog who maybe haven't had a chance to yet. But for me, the fact that you've melded kind of this cool, like sort of edgy espionage kind of thriller with a good chunk science fiction and maybe just a dab of like body horror kind of broke my box of what I put this in. Like initially I like read the back of it, I was like, okay, this sounds pretty cool, and you know I wanted to check it out. But reading through it, you know, I get a couple issues in and I'm just like my jaw's hitting the floor of like, what is this? I haven't read something
That's
that,
cool, man.
you know, like mixed all these things together in a way I felt was not only really earned, like I didn't feel like you I think sometimes when people blend these genres, sometimes it can be like, oh, this is a weird left turn. Now we're just going in this weird other direction. But what I liked about what you did with Old Dog, at least in these first, you know, 5 or 6 issues, is I felt like it was earned. Like as we delved a bit further into some of the science fiction and maybe light horror angles of it, I almost felt like it was like, oh, of course this is where it's going. Like it felt just so earned, and I think that it was a really like a testament to your writing and how you set it up and how you plotted it and paced it and everything. But yeah, it was really a fun ride. I had so much fun with it. But then you can
thanks, man.
imagine
Forgive me for interviewing you about it for a second, just because you know you put something out there and you don't necessarily get it back. Like if it's a licensed thing, everyone's going to like it for whatever the license is. When you do create your own thing, it's totally different to know like why did you like it? Why did you know you have to kind of investigate the audience sometimes. But no, I appreciate that. Are some things being earned is pretty big for me. It's tough thing with a creator own thing is you want to pack in all the ideas and sell all the ideas, but that's not the best storytelling, you know. So you know how it ends, or like that it does take a turn. But like, you know, I couldn't have done that in issue 2, you know, or I could have, but it would just seem out of place. You know, you need to be invested in the characters. Like I'm doing that a lot with Thundercats at the moment because, you know, if you just read this, if you go back and look at the original, it's you know, it's kind of a little ham-fisted. Whereas, you know, if I'm going to retake this franchise, I want you to know the characters and, you know, understand their motivations and how they clash and you know, I knew what I was going to do with Old Dog, and I knew where that first volume was going to end. But you know, you need the journey to get there in order to actually feel satisfied in any way. So, and also I knew I wanted to take that bit of a left turn because it's a creator-owned comic, and you know, if you don't do something ambitious, what's the point? You know, now that's not to say you can't do things that are ambitious at work for hire stuff, but like, you know, it can be more of a battle sometimes. But no, Old Dog was me wanting to, you know, I'd been writing for years. I've been writing for a few years at that stage, drawing for ages. Do all the design, do the colors, you know. I'm like, I colored the whole thing as well. It was exhausting. But it was like, this is my big swing. I want to do something that it's the whole thing. And it was really rewarding. And it was definitely like the type of stuff I wanted to be doing. Like I've been pitching some stuff at Marvel that hadn't quite kind of taken off. But then I was like, I could just pitch this thing to Image. You know, I had it in my back pocket the whole time. I was like, I could just pitch it now and start working on it. And that's exactly what happened. And it was like, it's kind of my love of all the espionage Marvel stuff. I love all that. Sleeper. Have you ever read Sleeper?
I have not read Sleeper yet. It's on my like wish list to read list. I've heard almost.
I mean, look, I'm assuming you like Brubaker and Phillips's work. I mean, that's I would say that's their first. I think it's their first big collaboration. But you know, it's basically a double agent in a superhero spy network or something. You know, so like, so that was kind of my initial inspiration to do a kind of a super genre thing, which ties into like, you know, Shield type stuff at Marvel, and I just kind of wanted to do something like that. So I just made it, which is great. And now, funnily enough, I'm doing exactly that on Mystique. Mystique is being hunted down by Nick Fury, so
man.
so I'm writing Shield hunting down a superhero. So the thing I made for myself, I've kind of ended up doing at Marvel anyway, which is great, because I am admittedly hoping there'll be a kind of a crossover for readers there. If you haven't read my stuff and you like Mystique, then maybe you might go and check out Old Dog. It wasn't designed that way, but I think it could be a pretty good ad for, because when I finish Mystique, I'm going to go back and do the next Old Dog book, basically. So that's my plan, is to kind of do maybe like an Old Dog novella, like a short, like a 40-page story, do a mainstream thing, do an Old Dog, so I can kind of build up Old Dog work around stuff that pays the bills,
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy you're planning to do more with Old Dog, because the only thing I'll say about this is the intense frustration I had when it was over. I was like, no, like,
but the thing is, I wrote myself into a corner there, because I was like, some things that can be tough with creator owned are just like the financials of it and the timing and yada yada yada. So I knew it would be easy to fall back into work for hire work, which is exactly what I've done this year. Everything I'm talking about is other than the Old Dog anthology, it's all work for hire. But I knew I was going to come back, but I knew I had to, because I wrote myself into a place where I can't leave it there, So it's frustrating for the reader, but only because you can shame me into coming back.
Well, to be fair, it is a good frustration. It's an earned frustration, and honestly, it's what's going to have me glued when you have these things released. Because at this point, I care about the characters. I want to see what happens. And while I have you, I just want to say is one really sorry if we're doing a little too much Old Dog, but I did want to talk about it.
No, please, thank you. I appreciate it.
The couple things I wanted to say was, this is actually the first thing I've read of yours that you've written. I realized when I was preparing for this that I've only ever seen your illustration, which, like I said, is brilliant. I love it. But I was curious to see you as a writer, and here you're obviously doing nearly everything. And I just wanted to comment just real quick. The art of this issue, where they're in the snow, is my absolute favorite in the collection. And I don't know why. I mean, the coloring we get throughout the rest of the work is amazing. The rest of the issues are awesome. But that issue in the snow, and I won't go into details because, like I said, I don't want to spoil anything, but that might have been like it just blew me back. That was where I was so glued in. I loved everything you did to kind of develop the character in that issue. And just there's something about these kind of gritty characters in snow that I've seen throughout comics that it's a sweet spot for me as a reader. And when I saw that, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna love this thing, aren't I? And here we are.
It's something that gets me with snow in comics. Generally tends to be colored like it's kind of like pure blue, which I hate. You know when you watch a film set in like the Arctic or whatever, it's white. Yeah, like it's pretty much like white. And I think sometimes people are scared of white. I think editors can be scared of white because it makes it look like you've done nothing. Now, to a degree, you have, because take the wins. I love stuff in snow. Issue 2 of Mystique is in snow as well, actually. A lot of snow. Okay. Well, Avalanche is in it, so I felt I needed to have that. But yeah, it was with that issue of Old Dog, I was like, everything should be faded and what, it's stark and cold. So, and again, I was trying to do things with color on that book, because I hadn't colored I colored an issue and covers, but I hadn't colored the whole graphic novel. So I knew I wanted to kind of do things with color with it too. So it was really me. I think I felt I'd been coasting a little bit after Injection with Warren, I think, and stuff that came my way that was fun, and I did one shots here and there and I enjoyed them, but I felt like I needed something a bit meaty, and therefore writing, drawing and coloring felt like a level of dedication I needed to put into something. So I'm very, very proud of it. Like I do want to do more. I was just so tired after doing everything.
I can't imagine.
So I was writing.
I'll be writing Alien.
Oh, good. Well, the Old Dog anthology. So I've written a short story for it, and there's short stories by Marius Bergara, Leonardo Romero, Charles Soule, Alex Packnadel, Luke Sparrow, who's on the Terminator book. He's got a story in it too. So the art's savage, and I got to color a Chris Sprouse story for me. That's cool. because I knew I was going to be doing Mystique for the year, so I wanted to put out something Old Dog related. I just knew we couldn't do
Yeah.
a whole book, but also I love other artists. I love collaborating. So that to me was my like I'm going to get something Old Dog out this year,
Awesome.
while I'm working on Mystique. So yeah, that'll be out September. I think September 18th.
Oh,
Could be
wow.
wrong
That's
about
coming
that.
up soon.
Yeah, FOC is this Monday.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
you can, so if you want to read more, you can. Um, and everybody else can too.
Awesome.
But yeah, so that's my way of kind of keeping my foot in the creator on space while I'm doing so much work for hire stuff too.
Right.
But I plan. But once I'm done with Mystique, I'll be back on Old Dog again.
Okay. And then when is your first issue of Mystique dropping?
That comes out the week after Terminator. So I think Terminator. What I say? Terminator's out the 9th of October, and Mystique is out the 16th of October.
Wow. So these next like month or two, you have a lot of big drops.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think next week, in the next 2 weeks, Volume 6 of Time Before Time, which is a time travel series I co-wrote with Rory McGonigal, the final volume that's out, and the same day, Phases of the Moon Knight issue 2 it comes out, where I've created a new Moon Knight, like a future Moon Knight.
Whoa.
So I wrote that story, designed the character too. So I have a lot of stuff out in the next 2 months specifically. Yeah.
Well, I hope it's a wildly successful couple months for all of you. I know I'm very excited. I'm very excited to check out some of these projects. I'm very excited for that.
I'm very tired. I'm excited but tired.
Yeah. I can't even fathom that, but I appreciate your time. I think we are going to get ready to land the plane. So I'm going to have one final question for you, if that's okay. And then we'll go ahead and say our goodbyes. Like I said, I'm so appreciative of your time, especially in the midst of everything you've had going on. My last question, I try to ask the comic book creators who I get to interview on this channel. As a comic book creator, it's a two-parter here. One, do you still have time, or do you make time at all to still read comics? And if so, what are you currently reading?
Well, I will say I'm very behind, very, very behind, and I hate it. I hate it when comic creators go, I'm too busy to read comics. I fucking hate that. Because, if you're not reading what's coming out, how are you on top of things? How are you not seeing the most creative stuff being made? How do you not know like what's innovative and interesting? Yes, I am crazy behind. I am. Let me see what have I read more recently. I'm reading the Rocketeer. A friend of mine, Stephen Mooney, is writing it. The new one, breaks free. I think Rocketeer breaks free. It's got Petrolhead by Rob Williams and Pi Parr. I got it a month ago. I just started reading it. It was fantastic. I'm reading. I read Daredevil all the time. It's the one book I will read, no matter who's on it.
That's my number one favorite character.
Kaya at Image, Sacrificers at Image, Void Rivals, Transformers. My problem is I fall behind on the issues, and then I end up I bought all the issues, but I just buy the trade, even though I had the issues. I just haven't read them yet. It's not a problem. What else am I getting? That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Perfect.
But I keep buying them, but my stack to read is just getting higher and higher, which is frustrating because one, there's so much good stuff out there, and two, like I said, like how can I be doing interesting stuff if I don't know what's coming out right now?
Sure. Yeah. Well, awesome. It's great to hear a little bit of what you're reading. And yeah, honestly, Declan Shalvey, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to some of these upcoming projects you have releasing. Thanks again for Dynamite Entertainment. Be on the lookout for Terminator, Mystique, that Old Dog anthology, just so many more you got coming out. And Declan, thank you so much for being on the channel.
Oh, my pleasure, Dominic. Thanks a million, man.
Alrighty. Thank you. This has been the Comic Book Report. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. A big thank you again to Dynamite Entertainment and Declan Shalvey. Have a good one.